Savannah's Riverwalk glittered with holiday lights, their reflections dancing across the slow-moving water. Tourists strolled past candy cane-striped booths, bundled in scarves and holding paper cups of cider. A jazz trio played "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas" near the old Cotton Exchange building, their mellow brass notes floating into the chilled air. Daniel Ruiz sat alone at a corner table outside a cafe, his hands wrapped around a mug that had long gone cold. He hadn't touched the coffee in 20 minutes. Not since he checked the time on his phone for the 5th time and saw there was still no message. She wasn't coming. Again. The waitress offered him a polite, practiced smile as she passed, but he didn't look up. His eyes were fixed on the couples passing by. Hand in hand, matching coats, laughing at nothing in particular. He could have left 30 minutes ago. Should have. But Isabel had helped him pick out his shirt that morning, said the deep blue looked sharp. She'd even slipped a drawing into his coat pocket, a stick figure of him with a speech bubble saying, "Nice to meet you," and a red heart floating beside it. 7 years old and already trying to play matchmaker. His sister Carmen had pushed him into this date. Said it was time. Said 2 years was long enough. It wasn't the waiting that hurt. It was the pattern. First the hopeful small talk, then the awkward pause when he mentioned Isabel, then the forced smile, and finally the excuse, always polite, always practiced. They never saw him. They saw a man with baggage. The last time someone said it out loud, "You seem great, but I'm not looking to raise someone else's child," he'd nodded, paid for dinner, and drove home without a word. He exhaled slowly, watching the steam disappear into the evening air. A server stepped out from the cafe and asked gently, "Would you like your check?" Sir Daniel hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah. Thank you." He pulled on his coat. The drawing rustled in the pocket, and he paused, fingers brushing over it. For a second, just 1 second, he let himself wish this night had gone differently. As he stood, a voice came from the next table. "Would you sit down for a moment?" He turned. The woman was alone. Mid-30s, maybe a little older, her dark hair tucked into a sleek, low bun. Tailored gray coat, leather gloves, heels too expensive for cobblestone. Her face was striking, though not in a way that demanded attention, more in the way that lingered in your memory after. He blinked, caught off guard. "Sorry." She looked up at him, her tone calm, matter-of-fact. I said, "Would you sit down? No offense, but I'm not really in the mood for company tonight." "I'm aware," she replied. "I watched you wait for someone who never showed." There was no pity in her voice, just observation. Daniel stiffened. "Were you watching me?" "Not intentionally. You're just hard to miss. That could have meant anything." He hesitated, his instincts telling him to walk away, but curiosity rooted him to the spot. "You've got 30 seconds, he said. "Make it count." The corners of her mouth lifted slightly. "What if I asked you to consider something unusual?" His brows rose. "I've had enough unusual for one night. I want to make a proposition." He let out a humorless laugh. "Lady, I'm not in the market for a scam." "It's not a scam." She gestured to the empty seat. "And I'm not crazy, just efficient." He hesitated. Then, against his better judgment, he sat. She extended her hand. "Charlotte Winslow." The name landed with quiet weight. He recognized it. Everyone did. Tech genius, CEO of Winslow Cyber Defense, one of those Forbes profiles Carmen always texted him about with a joking, "You should marry her. You own half of Charleston," he said. She tilted her head. "Only the firewalls." He tried to process the moment. "You really know how to pick a setting for life-altering conversations. It's Christmas. Everyone's distracted." She took a sip of her wine. "I overheard you talking to the waitress, and I watched you wait, and how you didn't check your phone obsessively. That told me something. That I'm pathetic, that you're patient, and probably tired." And trying anyway. Daniel leaned back, unsure whether to be insulted or impressed. Okay, you've got the floor. What's this proposition? She met his eyes without flinching. I want a family. And I can't have one. Not biologically, not conventionally. Every relationship I've tried has been transactional. Men see my money or my name, not me. He frowned. I still don't see what this has to do with me. I watched how you sat there. You weren't angry. You weren't performing. You were just waiting because someone asked you to try. Probably your daughter. The mention of Isabel made his heart twist. Charlotte continued, her voice lower now. I have everything except the one thing I want, a real home. People who don't expect anything from me except presents. Daniel stared at her, cautious. You're saying you want an arrangement? A practical one. But not cold. I'm not heartless. Just tired of failing the traditional way. He shook his head. That's not how families work. Maybe not. But maybe it's how one could begin. Silence stretched between them. The street around them was bustling with light and cheer, but at this table something quiet and odd was blooming. Daniel finally said, You don't know anything about me. I know enough. You're loyal. You showed up. You didn't pretend. He scoffed. That's a low bar. It's a rare one. Charlotte reached into her coat pocket and slid a slim envelope across the table. This isn't a contract. It's just my number. And some details. If you throw it away, I won't be offended. But if you're even slightly curious, call me. Before New Year's. He didn't pick it up. She stood, wrapped her coat around herself. It's getting colder. You should go home. Why me? He asked again, genuinely asking this time. She looked at him, something soft behind her composed gaze. Because when you mentioned your daughter, your whole face changed. And I thought, that's what real love looks like. Then she walked off into the festive crowd, heels clicking, swallowed by the sparkle and hum of the city. Daniel sat there for a long moment, the envelope untouched in front of him. And for the first time in years, something strange stirred in his chest. Not dread. Not exhaustion. Possibility. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1. To let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. Daniel didn't sleep that night. He made it home to the small house on Vernon Street just after 10. Isabel was already in bed, curled beneath her blanket, one foot kicked out as always. He stood in her doorway a long time, just watching her breathe. On the kitchen counter next to her half-finished art project, something with reindeer antlers and glitter glue. The envelope sat unopened. He'd slipped it into his coat pocket without thinking. Now it waited beside a plate of cookies they'd baked together that morning. She'd saved him the ones with the least sprinkles, because you're not a sprinkle kind of guy, Daddy. His hands hovered over the envelope. It was just a number. A piece of paper. No more binding than a flyer on a telephone pole. But something about her Charlotte clung to him like the scent of her perfume. Not floral? Clean, quiet, like eucalyptus or fresh linen. The kind of smell that lingered in rooms long after someone had gone. He told himself not to open it. Told himself this was insane. That even thinking about it made him the kind of man who didn't deserve to be a father. Still, he unfolded the flap. Inside a white card, heavy stock, simple serif font, Charlotte Winslow, a direct phone number, a short note typed, not handwritten, no expectations. Just an offer. See. He stared at the note for a long time, then slid it back into the envelope, placed it under the magnet on the fridge, and told himself that was the end of it. The next morning, Isabel danced into the kitchen barefoot and humming jingle bells. Her curls were half tamed into a ponytail. She reached up, tugged at the fridge magnet, and frowned. What's this? Daniel took the envelope quickly. Junk mail. Junk mail with fancy paper. He shot her a look. She grinned and popped a grape into her mouth. You sleep okay? He asked. Yep. Dreamed you married a baker and we had cupcakes for breakfast. He raised an eyebrow. A baker, huh? I like frosting, she said seriously. And you need someone who knows how to use the oven timer. He laughed, ruffling her hair. Go get dressed. School in 30. She skipped down the hall, singing about cupcakes and tiaras. He sat at the table, her words echoing back. You need someone. He hadn't needed anyone in a long time, or rather he hadn't let himself. After Jennifer passed, the silence in the house became a kind of rhythm. The routines kept him steady. Lunches packed, forms signed, laundry folded, smiles forced, bad dates endured, one foot in front of the other. Then Charlotte Winslow had walked into the scene like something scripted. Calm, impossibly composed, offering him something between rescue and risk. He pulled out his phone. No texts, no obligations. He hesitated for 3 full minutes before typing her number into a blank message thread. The cursor blinked at him like it was waiting to see if he had any backbone left. Finally, he typed, Still not sure what you're offering. Still not sure why I didn't walk away. But if you're serious, I'll talk. One conversation, that's it. He hovered over send. Then he tapped it. And regretted it immediately. She replied 7 minutes later. I'm at my Savannah office until 4. If you want a neutral location, there's a coffee shop off Broughton Street, Sable and Oak. Quiet booths, best cinnamon rolls in town. No pressure, Daniel. Just a conversation. He stared at her message like it was some kind of riddle. She remembered his name. He replied simply 12:30. The cafe was small, tucked between a used bookstore and a florist that had clearly overspent on their holiday window display. Strings of lights, shaped like stars, dangled from the ceiling. The smell of cinnamon and espresso wrapped around him the moment he stepped inside. She was already there. Of course she was. Same coat, different scarf, charcoal gray wrapped tight at her neck. She looked like she'd stepped out of a high-end catalog, and yet somehow didn't seem out of place. A mug sat in front of her untouched. She was reading something on her phone, but looked up the moment he approached. You came. He shrugged, sliding into the booth. Mostly for the cinnamon rolls. She smiled. They're overrated, but the privacy's good. A server appeared, and Daniel ordered black coffee, declining food despite the smells pulling at him. Charlotte waited until the server was gone before speaking again. I know how this looks. Do you? Yes. She folded her hands. No jewelry, no wedding ring. It looks crazy. A stranger making an offer that sounds clinical. Cold, but it's not meant to be. Daniel watched her carefully. What is it meant to be? Oh, start, she said. Maybe just a conversation that helps 2 lonely people feel less crazy. Maybe something more. I'm not forcing it. You seem used to getting what you want. She met that without flinching. I'm used to earning it. And you think you can earn a family? I think families are built, not inherited. He blinked. That surprised him, she went on. I spent a decade building a company. I work with federal bank cybersecurity teams. I've solved problems most executives don't understand, but I've never been able to hold on to something personal. People see my job, my money. They don't see me. He didn't speak. Let the quiet fill in. She took a breath. I had a fiancé once, 2 years ago. He left when I told him I couldn't have kids. Daniel's jaw tightened. I offered adoption, IVF surrogacy, anything. He said he wanted his own family. Her voice didn't shake, but something in her posture softened. As if love has to match DNA to matter. Daniel looked away. The overhead lights were soft, but his eyes burned anyway. I've wanted children since I was young, she said. But not just children. A home, a rhythm, shared mornings, grocery runs, homework battles. He laughed under his breath. It's not always cute. It's exhausting. I know. She gave him a pointed look. That's why I'm not looking for fantasy. I'm looking for partnership. He leaned back. Why me? I overheard you telling the waitress about your daughter's Christmas drawing, the way your face changed when you spoke about her. She paused. I want to be in a house where that kind of love exists. He couldn't respond. Charlotte opened her purse and slid another envelope across the table. Smaller this time. This isn't a contract, it's a letter. My version of honesty? Read it. Throw it away if you want. I won't follow up. Daniel stared at it. Why now, he asked. Because I'm tired of being alone, she said simply. And you looked like someone who might be too. He didn't pick it up. Just sat there quiet, unsure whether to be angry or grateful. Charlotte stood adjusting her coat. I hope your daughter gets everything she hopes for this Christmas. He nodded slowly. She wants a mom. Charlotte's eyes flickered. Then maybe she and I want the same thing. She left without waiting for a reply. Daniel stayed in that booth long after she disappeared down the sidewalk, his coffee gone cold again, the envelope resting untouched between his hands. Daniel waited until Isabel was fast asleep before he opened the envelope. The house was quiet, the only sound coming from the dishwasher humming in the kitchen. He stood at the dining table, hands resting on the unopened letter, like it might disappear if he looked away. It was addressed simply to Daniel. Not for business, just truth. He sat down carefully, tore the seal, and pulled out a single sheet of cream-colored paper. Her handwriting surprised him. Neat, elegant, but not stiff. There was a steadiness to it, a rhythm that felt more like conversation than confession. You asked me why you. I still don't have the perfect answer. Maybe there isn't one. Maybe this is all timing and instinct. But I saw something in you that night, something steady, real. I wasn't looking for a rescue. I'm not offering one either. I've done life on my own terms, earned what I have, protected it sometimes, at a cost I didn't fully understand. What I never built, though, was a life that included anyone else. I want a family. I want quiet mornings. I want holiday traditions and messy kitchens and laughter that doesn't feel staged. I know that sounds strange coming from someone like me. But wanting those things doesn't make me less capable. And you looked like someone who'd built a home with love. That's rare. I see it in how you speak about your daughter. I want to learn what that kind of love looks like from the inside. I'm not promising perfection. I'm promising effort. If you're willing to talk again, I'd like to see you and Isabel on your terms. No pressure, no expectations. Charlotte Daniel sat with the letter open in front of him, elbows on the table, hands folded beneath his chin. The word that kept echoing in his mind wasn't family, or partnership, or even love. It was effort. She'd used that word like a vow, and the strange part, he believed her. The next morning, Isabel woke early, excited about the school's Christmas craft party. She barely touched her cereal, too focused on gluing pom-poms to a paper wreath she'd started the night before. Can you come today? She asked, eyes bright. We're allowed to bring a guest. Daniel hesitated. He had client files to review, a virtual meeting scheduled. But the way she looked at him, hope wide on her face. Of course, he said. Wouldn't miss it. At the elementary school, the cafeteria had been transformed into a winter explosion construction paper. Snowflakes glitter everywhere, and enough sugar cookies to spike every kid's energy for a week. Daniel sat at a tiny folding table, knees pressed to the underside, helping Isabel attach tiny foam stars to her wreath. Across the room, other kids giggled with their parents. A few moms eyed him, some with curiosity, others with that same look he'd seen on dates, polite, then gone. You're good at this, Isabel said, squinting as she adjusted a red bow. Maybe you should work at Michael's. He laughed. You trying to get me a new job? No, I like your job. I just think you'd be good at other stuff too. He paused, then lowered his voice. If someone wanted to come to the next school event with us, what would you think? Isabel looked up. Like a babysitter. No, not a sitter. A friend? A lady friend. His face flushed. Maybe. She went back to the bow. Would she bring cookies? He blinked. I have no idea. Then I'd have to meet her first. Fair enough. Back home, Daniel pulled out his phone. The screen lit up with Charlotte's contact. He stared at it for a full minute before typing, "Would you like to meet Isabel?" The reply came 3 minutes later. Yes, I'd be honored. Your place or neutral ground, our house. Saturday morning. Pancakes. 9 a.m. There was a long pause. Then I'll bring the syrup. Saturday came with low clouds and the smell of rain in the air. Daniel cleaned the house twice. He wasn't sure why it wasn't messy, but suddenly everything felt too lived in. He caught himself straightening Isabel's drawings on the fridge, then stopped. Let it be real. Isabel helped him mix pancake batter. She insisted on adding chocolate chips, even though he warned her it would burn. At 9:01, the doorbell rang. He opened it to find Charlotte standing on the porch, casually dressed in jeans boots and a thick cream sweater that looked more cozy than corporate. She held a paper bag in one hand. Maple syrup, she said. The good kind. You came, he said, stepping aside. Of course I did. Inside, Isabel peeked from behind the kitchen island. Charlotte crouched a little, not too much, just enough to meet her on even ground. You must be Isabel, she said gently. Isabel tilted her head. Do you really own computers? Charlotte smiled. Not all of them. Just a few that help people stay safe online. Do you know how to play Uno? I do. Then you can stay. Daniel exhaled quietly as Charlotte followed Isabel into the living room, where a stack of games waited. They made pancakes, ate around the small dining table, laughed more than he expected. After breakfast, Isabel set up a game on the floor, and Daniel found himself leaning against the wall watching them shuffle cards. Charlotte didn't try too hard. She let Isabel take the lead, asked questions, didn't force anything. She fit in the way a new ornament does, noticeable, but not out of place. When Charlotte finally stood to leave, Isabel grabbed a pen and scrawled something on a sticky note. This is our Wi-Fi password, she said. So next time you can connect faster. Charlotte folded the note like it was precious. Thank you, Isabel. I'll keep this safe. At the door, Daniel walked her out. She's incredible, Charlotte said quietly. She's my whole world. Charlotte nodded. Then I'll move carefully. Their eyes met, and for the first time it wasn't about propositions, or letters, or curiosity. It was about trust. Next Saturday, she asked. He nodded. We'll have muffins. As she walked down the path, Daniel closed the door behind her and leaned against it for a long moment. It wasn't just a conversation anymore. It was something beginning. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. It rained the next Saturday. The kind of rain that lingered soft and cold, hanging like mist across the streets of Savannah. Daniel stood at the kitchen window, mug in hand, watching tiny rivers roll down the glass. Isabel was still asleep. Charlotte was due in 20 minutes. He checked the oven. Muffins golden brown, cooling on the stovetop. He'd made blueberry. Her favorite, at least according to what she'd ordered last time they went out. Why did he remember that? Why was he nervous? The house was clean, but not perfect. Isabel's crayons were still scattered near the coffee table, a blanket half draped over the back of the couch. the kind of real-life mess that made a house feel lived in. He didn't move them. When the knock came, it was soft. Not a statement, just a presence. He opened the door. Charlotte stood under a navy umbrella, cheeks pink from the cold, her curls loose around her shoulders this time. She smiled, holding up a paper bag and a thermos. "Brought the good coffee," she said. "You keep bribing us like this, you might get invited for dinner." She stepped inside, shaking off rain. "That sounds dangerously close to an upgrade." He gave a faint grin, taking her coat. "I think Isabel's still asleep." As if on cue, a tiny voice called out from the hallway. "I'm not. I'm just pretending so you two can flirt in peace." Charlotte raised an eyebrow. Daniel covered his face. "She's 7. I swear I'm not teaching her that." Isabel appeared with a pillow clutched under her arm and a toothy grin. "I heard muffins." Charlotte crouched, handing her the bag. "And I brought marshmallows for your hot chocolate. They're shaped like snowflakes." Isabel's eyes widened. "You're a genius." Daniel watched as his daughter took Charlotte's hand and led her to the kitchen like they'd known each other for years. It hit him how easy it was, how terrifyingly easy. After breakfast, Isabel took Charlotte to her room to show her a poster she'd drawn of the perfect Christmas, a picture full of presents, pancakes, and 3 stick figures in Santa hats. One was clearly labeled "Me Another Dad," and the last, maybe Charlotte. Daniel saw it later when Charlotte quietly pointed it out. Her voice was soft, almost unsure. She wrote, "Maybe." "Yeah," he said. "She's careful. She's had to be." Charlotte didn't answer. She didn't have to. That afternoon, Carmen stopped by. Early. Unannounced. The moment she stepped through the door, rain clinging to her boots, she froze. Charlotte was helping Isabel with a puzzle on the rug. They both looked up. Carmen blinked, then turned to Daniel with a face that said, "Really, did I miss an invitation?" she asked lightly. Charlotte stood. Calm, composed. "Hi, I'm Charlotte Winslow." Carmen's eyes narrowed just slightly. "Yes, I know." Daniel stepped in. "Carmen, can I talk to you in the kitchen?" Charlotte took the hint and sat back down with Isabel, who barely looked up. In the kitchen, Carmen dropped her umbrella against the wall. Her voice was low. "You brought Charlotte Winslow into your house, into Isabel's life." Daniel folded his arms. "Don't do this. I'm just trying to understand. She's a billionaire. This isn't some date you met through friends. She's corporate. She's cold. She's not cold." "She proposed an arrangement," Carmen snapped. "You told me. That's not normal, Daniel. That's calculated." He let that sit. Then answered slowly. "And I calculated that she deserves a chance." Carmen stared at him. "So this is real now, I don't know what it is. But Isabel likes her. I like her, and she's showing up. That counts for something." Silence. Carmen exhaled, running a hand through her curls. "Look, I'm not trying to be the bad guy. I just don't want to see you two used." Daniel's voice softened. "Neither do I." She glanced toward the living room. "She's wearing jeans. That's your criteria for trust. It helps." Later that night, after Carmen left with a non-committal, "We'll talk more," Charlotte lingered in the kitchen as Isabel played in her room. "She doesn't like me," she said quietly. "She's protective," Daniel replied. "She's seen me crash and burn. She doesn't want to watch it happen again." Charlotte nodded. "Fair." He hesitated, then asked, "Did it bother you that she's wary?" Charlotte glanced toward the hallway. "No. Honestly, it made me respect her." Daniel leaned against the counter, folding his arms. "I don't know what this is. You and me. But it's more than pancakes, I know. And I've got to be careful. Not just for me. For Isabel. I know that too." They stood in silence. Rain still pattered softly against the window. The warmth of the room wrapped around them like a quiet promise. Charlotte stepped closer just a bit. "Would it help if I told you the truth?" He looked at her. "Which truth?" "The one I don't put in letters. The one I'm scared to say out loud." Daniel didn't speak, just waited. She took a breath. "I'm lonely. Not in a dramatic violin-playing way. Just tired of being in rooms full of people and still feeling like I don't belong. I built everything I thought I needed, and I still come home and wonder if this is it." Daniel watched her. She wasn't performing. No pitch. No plan. Just raw. She went on. "And then I saw you, sitting there, waiting for someone who didn't show, and you didn't look broken. You looked like someone who stayed. That's what I noticed." He swallowed. "You make it sound noble." "It is." He hesitated, then said quietly, "I haven't let anyone in." "Not really. Not since Jennifer. It's been me and Isabel and a checklist." Charlotte nodded. "You can keep your checklist. I just want to be on it." They stood there quiet and closed the weight of everything unsaid thick between them. Then Isabel called from the hallway. "Dad, can she stay for movie night?" Daniel looked at Charlotte. She smiled. "If I'm invited," he called back. "Only if you like bad Christmas movies and too much popcorn." "Deal," Isabel shouted. Charlotte's eyes met his. It wasn't love yet. But it was something warm, something starting. 2 weeks passed. Savannah settled into the quiet cold of late December, the kind of cold that snuck up on you, not dramatic, just constant. Daniel noticed it most in the mornings, when the air bit a little harder and the windows fogged just enough to make the world look soft and uncertain. And in those 2 weeks, something else softened, too. Charlotte came every Saturday sometimes on a Tuesday evening, once even with takeout on a Thursday after Isabel had a dentist appointment. She didn't announce herself like a guest. She didn't hover like someone trying to impress. She just came. Steady. Present. It was unsettling. Not in the way bad things were, but in the way good things sometimes felt when you weren't sure you could trust them. Isabel, of course, had no such reservations. One afternoon, as they decorated the small pine tree in the living room, Isabel declared that Charlotte would be part of their Christmas Eve tradition, which she'd just made up apparently, and involved grilled cheese sandwiches and watching the Polar Express with flashlights for no particular reason. Daniel had raised an eyebrow. "That's not a tradition." Isabel grinned. "It is now." Charlotte didn't hesitate. "I'll bring the good bread." Daniel had watched the two of them stringing lights and laughing at nothing. It stirred something in him he couldn't name. A fear, maybe. A hope. And hope that was dangerous. That Sunday morning he met Carmen for coffee, just the two of them. He'd asked her to give Charlotte some space, and to her credit she had. But her silence didn't mean her concerns were gone. "Are you falling for her?" she asked, straight out. Daniel sipped his coffee. "It's not that simple. You're thinking about it. I'm trying not to." "Why?" He leaned back in the booth, eyes on the rain sliding down the cafe window. "Because she's not here for a romance. That's not what this is." Carmen crossed her arms. "Then what is it? She's not trying to replace anyone. She's not asking for guarantees. She's just showing up. Isabel likes her, and I don't hate having someone to talk to after bedtime." Carmen studied him. "Do you like her?" He didn't answer. Carmen softened. "Danny, I'm not trying to ruin this. I just know what it cost you last time. And Isabel doesn't get another first chance." "If Charlotte's just passing through, she's not," he said quietly. "That's the part I can't figure out. She's not passing through." Back at home that afternoon, Charlotte and Isabel were in the kitchen elbows deep in flour and sugar, making what could generously be called cookies. Daniel leaned in the doorway, arms crossed, watching them. "Your recipe says 3 eggs," Isabel said, holding up the carton. "No," Charlotte said, laughing, "it says 2. That third one's a backup. For science. Dad says you measure everything, all the time. Usually, yes. But some things are worth messing up to get right." Daniel smiled to himself. That night, after Isabel had gone to bed, Charlotte stayed a little longer. They sat on the couch, mugs of peppermint tea in hand, the Christmas tree glowing in the corner of the room. Daniel finally asked, "Why are you really here?" She didn't pretend to misunderstand. "Because this is the only place I don't feel like I'm failing." He looked at her, surprised. Charlotte stared into her mug. "At work, I'm either behind or ahead. Never just enough. My board thinks I'm getting distracted. My mother thinks I'm wasting my time." "My father?" She paused. "He just asked if I was having a midlife crisis." Daniel's brow lifted. "Because of us. Because I'm not acting like I'm supposed to." He was quiet for a moment. "And how are you supposed to act detached, controlled, successful, alone?" Her voice cracked just slightly on that last word. She cleared her throat and added, "I didn't grow up in a house like this." He looked around. "You mean small, I mean warm." Daniel watched her a long moment. "I don't know what this is turning into," he said. "But it's not a game." Isabel's 7. Her heart's not a test drive. Charlotte looked up sharply. "Do you think I'd hurt her? I think you don't fully understand what this means to her yet. She's already drawing pictures with your name in the corner." Charlotte's face went still. "I'm not saying back off," Daniel said. "I'm saying, be sure, before she starts writing your name in permanent marker." Charlotte swallowed hard. She set down her mug. "I do want to be here," she said. "I'm not trying this on like a new coat. I know it's real. That's why I'm scared out of my mind." Daniel nodded slowly. "I am too." Then for a moment neither of them spoke. The tree lights blinked in quiet rhythm. Outside the rain had turned to mist. Everything felt paused, breath held. Charlotte finally stood. "I should go." Daniel followed her to the door, opening it gently. She stepped out onto the porch, then turned back her coat, not yet buttoned, her hair slightly frizzy from the heat of the house. "Will you let me keep showing up?" she asked. His answer came before he could second-guess it. "Yes." She nodded once. And then she walked down the steps into the night and out of sight. Daniel closed the door behind her, leaned against it again, and looked at the empty space she'd left behind. It didn't feel empty at all. The first time Charlotte invited them to Charleston, Daniel hesitated. It was the week before Christmas, and Isabel had just finished her last day of school. She was buzzing with excitement, already planning which pajamas to wear for their Christmas Eve movie night. They'd been settling into a rhythm, Charlotte joining them for weekend breakfasts, Isabel creating scavenger hunts, just so Charlotte would come over and help solve the clues. Then Charlotte mentioned the invitation over dinner one night, casual but careful. "My parents are having a holiday brunch at the house next Sunday," she said, pouring more cider into Isabel's cup. "It's traditional, mostly quiet, lots of silver and old piano music." Daniel glanced up. "Sounds fancy." Charlotte gave a half smile. "Sounds exhausting. But I want you to come." He blinked. "Me and Isabel, both of you." She set the pitcher down. "They've been asking. I think they want to see what I've been spending my weekends doing." Isabel's eyes lit up. "We get to visit a mansion." Charlotte chuckled. "It's not quite a mansion." "Yes, it is," Isabel whispered to Daniel. "Rich people always say that when it is." He leaned in. "Probably has rooms just for hats." She nodded sagely. "And a bathroom with more than 2 towels." Charlotte watched them quietly, her smile soft. But there was something behind it, a hint of nerves, Something more than just brunch. Later that night, after Isabel had gone to bed, Daniel stood by the sink, rinsing dishes, while Charlotte dried them with a kitchen towel that read, "Bake more worry, less Isabel's pick from the craft fair." "So, this brunch," he said. Charlotte didn't look up. "They know I've been seeing someone," I figured. "They're not like you." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "What does that mean?" "It means they expect things. Appearances, conversations that sound polished and pleasant." She folded the towel carefully. "You're warm, Daniel. You say what you mean. That's going to throw them." He turned off the water. "You inviting us because you want to, or because you want to prove something?" Charlotte's eyes met his. "Because I want them to see something real, even if they don't understand it." He studied her for a long second. "You're not scared of much, but you're scared of them." She gave a small nod. "They have a way of turning something good into something questionable, even when they don't mean to." He leaned against the counter. "We don't have to go." "I want you to." He nodded slowly. "Then we will." When they arrived in Charleston that Sunday, Isabel pressed her nose to the window as they pulled up the winding driveway. The Winslow estate sat like something from a holiday movie. Grand understated the kind of place where nothing looked new because everything was already perfect. "This is definitely a mansion," Isabel whispered. Charlotte met them at the front steps, bundled in a pale blue coat. She smiled when she saw them, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Inside, the ceilings arched high above crystal chandeliers. A live pianist played soft carols in the corner. The scent of pine cinnamon and something elegant fig hung in the air. Isabel immediately found herself surrounded by waitstaff, offering small plates of things she couldn't pronounce. "I don't know what this is," she told one server, "but I'll try it because I'm brave." Daniel chuckled under his breath. He stayed close to her, scanning the room. Everyone looked curated. Crisp collars, subtle jewelry, polite, distant smiles. Then Charlotte's parents appeared. Her mother, Evelyn, extended a hand with the grace of someone used to being greeted first. "You must be Daniel." "And this is," Isabel, Daniel said. "My daughter." Evelyn gave a polite smile. "So lovely to meet you both." Charlotte spoken highly. Her father, Richard, looked less interested in small talk. "How long have you been acquainted?" Daniel glanced at Charlotte, who stepped in quickly. "Dad." "It's a fair question," Richard replied. Daniel's voice was calm. "A few months. We've taken our time." Richard studied him like a spreadsheet. Evelyn smiled again, tighter this time. "It's lovely that Charlotte is branching out." Charlotte stiffened. Daniel noticed. Isabel tugged at his sleeve. "Dad, can we look at the piano?" He nodded, grateful for the out. "Of course." They walked to the far corner, the music softer here. Isabel slid onto the bench, plunking a few keys while Daniel knelt beside her. She leaned in and whispered, "These people don't know how to laugh." Daniel smiled. "They just forgot." She pressed a key. "You don't forget how to laugh." "No," he said quietly. "But some people learn to hide it." Across the room, Charlotte stood with her parents. Their conversation hushed. Her arms were crossed. Her mother gestured toward Daniel, toward Isabel, as if discussing an inconvenience. Charlotte didn't flinch, but her shoulders told a different story. Isabel turned back to the piano. "Will she still come over for movie night?" Daniel looked at her, surprised. "Why wouldn't she? Because this doesn't feel like her." He followed her gaze. Charlotte looked composed, but not comfortable. As if she was wearing a version of herself that didn't quite fit anymore. "Come on," Daniel said softly. "Let's find some air." They slipped outside to the back garden. It was colder than expected, the sky gray and low, but the air felt freer. A few minutes later, Charlotte found them on a bench by the fountain. "You okay?" she asked. Daniel stood. "Should I be asking you that?" She exhaled. "They mean well." "No, they don't." She gave a small laugh. "Fair." Isabel looked up. "You don't belong in there." Charlotte sat beside her. "That's what I've been trying to tell myself for years." Isabel leaned her head on Charlotte's arm. "You belong with us. We have muffins." Charlotte's eyes went glassy. Daniel watched the two of them, his daughter and this woman who had walked into their lives like a question they weren't ready to answer, and somehow became the start of an answer they hadn't dared to ask. He spoke softly. "You don't have to prove anything, Charlotte. Not to them." She looked at him. "I wasn't trying to," she said. "Not really." "Then what were you trying?" She reached for his hand. "To believe I could build something real, even if it doesn't look like what I grew up with." He didn't pull away. And for the first time that day, something in her shoulders loosened. They sat in the cold, quiet garden, the sounds of clinking glasses and distant piano fading behind them, and just listened to the water move. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And that, for Charlotte, was everything. It snowed on Christmas Eve. Not much, just a soft, dusting, unexpected for Savannah. The kind of snow that melted as soon as it touched your coat, but still felt like magic, especially to a 7-year-old with a vivid imagination and no patience for weather forecasts. Isabel stood at the front window, her hands pressed to the cold glass. "It's real," she whispered. "Actual snow." Daniel chuckled from the kitchen where he was burning the edges of a grilled cheese. "Barely. Blink, and it'll be gone." She turned to him, eyes wide. "You have to take a picture. This is historical." He waved the spatula. "Eat first, then history." She groaned, but ran to set the table, already humming a Christmas tune she'd made up on the spot. Charlotte arrived just before 7, a knit scarf wrapped twice around her neck cheeks, flushed from the cold. She stepped inside with a grin and a small bakery box in hand. "I brought dessert," she said, shaking off the chill. "But it may not survive the drive." I took a corner too fast. Daniel took the box, peeking inside. Cookies in the shape of reindeer, one with a broken leg. Charlotte winced. "Symbolic, maybe," tragic Isabel said dramatically. "We'll eat that one last as a moment of respect." The night unfolded the way good nights do, quiet, a little silly warm around the edges. They ate grilled cheese and tomato soup, because that was the official Christmas Eve tradition. They watched the Polar Express under a fort made of blankets. Charlotte stayed on the floor with Isabel the entire time, pointing out plot holes and pretending to be terrified of the hobo ghost. Later, after Isabel had fallen asleep halfway through her second hot chocolate, Daniel tucked her in while Charlotte cleaned up the living room. When he returned, she was standing near the window, arms folded, watching the snow. He joined her. "It's not sticking," she said. "Nope." "Still nice." He glanced at her. "You okay?" She nodded slowly, then leaned her shoulder against the window frame. "That house in Charleston. My parents' house, I never felt like I could breathe in it." He didn't say anything. Tonight, I breathed. Daniel let that sit. Then, after a moment, "It's not much, this house. We don't even have matching dishes." She smiled. "You have laughter, and love, and a kid who thinks a broken cookie deserves a eulogy. That's worth more than all the polished silver in Charleston." There was a quiet between them then, not awkward, just full. Like the kind of silence that holds everything important without needing to speak it. Then she said softly, "Can I ask you something?" He nodded. "If I wanted this." Not just a visit, not just to come by on weekends, but really wanted this. Would that scare you? His breath caught a little. Yes, he said honestly. But I'd still want it anyway. Charlotte turned to face him. What if I wanted it too? He didn't look away. Then I'd say we need to talk about what that means. Because if you want in Charlotte, you're not just coming into my life, you're stepping into Isabel's. That's sacred ground. I know. She's not a project. She's not a, let's see how this feels experiment. Charlotte swallowed. I know that too. He watched her. Then tell me why this isn't temporary for you. She took a step closer. Because I don't want to spend another Christmas wondering what I'm missing. Because I look at her and see a future I didn't think I deserved. Because I look at you, and I don't feel like I'm too much or not enough. I just feel home. Daniel's voice dropped to a whisper. You're not scared, I'm terrified, she said. But I'd rather be terrified in a life that matters than safe in a life that doesn't. He stood there, every instinct screaming to protect the little life he'd built, to shield Isabel, to shield himself. And yet he reached out and gently brushed a snowflake from her hair. I'm not promising easy, he said. I'm not asking for easy. I've been through loss, Charlotte, the kind that rewrites everything. I don't have casual left in me. I don't want casual. Daniel searched her face, looking for doubt. There wasn't any. Just her, present, steady, honest. Then from the hallway a small voice called out. Is it still snowing? They both turned. Isabel was standing there, sleepy-eyed, dragging her blanket behind her. Charlotte crouched. A little bit? Yeah. Then can we go outside for 1 minute, just one? Daniel smiled. Barefoot. She lifted a foot. Slippers. He looked at Charlotte. Let's do it, she said. They stepped onto the porch, wrapped in coats and laughter. Isabel ran down the steps, trying to catch flakes on her tongue, arms out like wings. Charlotte stood beside Daniel, watching her twirl. She's joy, Charlotte whispered. She's everything, he replied. And standing there on a quiet porch in a city that rarely saw snow, Daniel realized something. He wasn't waiting for life to start again. It already had. The sound of the engine lingered long after Jake turned the key off. Not in the air, but in the silence that followed. It was the kind of silence that didn't feel empty. It felt full, charged, like something sacred had just happened, and everyone knew better than to speak too quickly. Miranda stood a few steps back from the Mustang arms, lightly crossed eyes fixed on the dashboard, like it still held the answers she hadn't known she was looking for. Jake didn't rush to break the moment. He waited. He knew that look. He'd seen it on Sarah's face once, the first time the engine fired clean, the first time it sounded not like an experiment, but a heartbeat. Is it always like that? Miranda finally asked, her voice quieter than before. Jake nodded. Every time. She exhaled slowly, then looked over at him. I don't know how I missed this. How everyone missed it. You didn't miss it, Jake said. You just never looked in the places where things are built in silence. Miranda didn't smile. But there was something warmer in her eyes now. Benji wandered back in from the house, holding a water bottle, earbuds still hanging around his neck. Is it weird that I'm kinda getting used to seeing you here? He asked Miranda, half teasing. She let out a breath of a laugh. I'll try not to overstay my welcome. Jake looked between them. Something about this scene, his son, the Mustang Miranda in his garage, felt so surreal, it almost didn't fit. And yet, it did. Miranda turned back to the car. What would happen if this engine went public? Jake's expression shifted. Guarded again. A lot of attention, he said. A lot of scrutiny. Probably a dozen companies lining up to buy patents. Try to reverse engineer it. Water it down. But what if we didn't sell it? She asked. What if we used it right? Jake tilted his head. Define right. Miranda stepped closer, hands at her sides now. What if we didn't give it to the market, but gave it to the future infrastructure, emergency systems, humanitarian transport, off-grid communities? Think about it. A power train that doesn't rely on combustion or unstable grid systems. This could change everything. Jake looked down, his jaw tight. That was always the dream, he said. It's why we called it Aurora, first light, but dreams get heavy when you're carrying them alone. Miranda's voice softened. You're not alone anymore. Jake looked up, eyes meeting hers. He didn't answer. The next day, Langston's executive conference room filled with tension before anyone even spoke. Miranda stood at the head of the table, a large display behind her showing a freeze frame of Jake's engine on screen. No branding, no labels, just clean lines and raw design. Around the table sat 8 of the most powerful department heads in the company: finance, legal, engineering, media, and a few old board members who never said much, but always listened like hawks. Before we start, Miranda began. I want to make something clear. The room quieted instantly. This isn't a pitch. It's not a product. It's a proposal to reimagine how we invest in innovation, not by taking it, but by building around it. Someone at the far end, Miles Denning, VP of Strategy, leaned back, skeptical. Are we talking about this janitor again? Miranda's voice didn't waver. We're talking about an MIT-trained engineer who designed something our labs couldn't duplicate in 10 years. Miles raised a brow. And you trust this engine? There's no precedent, no peer review, no manufacturing model. It runs, she cut in. Perfectly. I heard it. You can too if you're willing to visit a garage instead of a boardroom. Whispers rolled across the table. Another exec, Elena Shaw, head of legal, folded her hands. Even if it's real, Miranda, the patent's expired. It was never formalized. That means anyone could claim it. You want Langston to back something that's legally floating? Miranda took a breath. I'm not backing an engine. I'm backing a man who gave up everything trying to build something better. A pause. Then, he didn't come to us. I went to him. That landed. You could feel the balance shift just slightly. Give me 90 days, she said. To develop a case for partnership, not ownership. I want to do this differently. This company was founded on risk. I'm asking for one more. There were no immediate approvals, just silence. Then murmurs. Then a slow nod from one of the senior members. Miranda stepped back from the table. The tide hadn't turned fully, but it was moving. That evening, Jake stood outside the garage, arms crossed, watching the sunset paint the driveway in soft orange. He heard her before he saw her. Miranda pulled up in the same rented sedan, stepping out with something in her hand, an old folder, its corners worn and soft from time. Jake raised an eyebrow. More offers? She walked over, holding it out. He took it slowly, opened it. Inside were 3 things. A printed image of their original patent submission, one he hadn't seen in over a decade. 2, a note in her handwriting: I can't change what we missed, but I can help make sure no one misses what's next. 3, a photo, a still frame from the rooftop showcase, the Mustang. Jake, the moment the engine first sang. He stared at it for a long time, then looked up. You're serious about this? She nodded. I don't want to take anything from you, Jake. I want to build something with you. He studied her face. There was no performance there, no calculation, just someone trying to get it right. He set the folder down and leaned against the hood of the car. I'm not easy to work with, he said. I like things slow, precise. I'm not here to impress shareholders. I don't need you to be, Miranda said. I need you to keep being you. He watched her for a long moment, then nodded once. Then let's build it. And for the first time since Sarah was gone, Jake felt something rise in his chest that had been quiet for too long. Hope. Winter in Savannah had a way of pretending it was something else. By mid-January, the mornings were cold enough for sweaters, but the afternoons teased of spring. Daniel found himself walking Isabel to school, with his jacket half-zipped coffee in hand, wondering how life had shifted so quietly into something that felt full. He was seeing Charlotte regularly now, not in some defined, boxed-in way, but in a rhythm that felt honest. She still worked in Charleston during the week, but her weekends were spent with them more often than not. Sometimes she drove in late Friday and stayed through Sunday evening. Sometimes she'd send a text on Wednesday, "Miss your cooking. Save me a plate." And somehow Daniel always did. But as natural as it felt between them, there were tremors beneath the surface. They hadn't talked much about the future, not since New Year's. They hadn't discussed what it meant for Isabel, or what it meant for Daniel to invite someone fully into their lives. Not in words, at least. That silence sat like a bookmark, holding a place neither of them was ready to read aloud. On a chilly Saturday morning, Charlotte arrived with her laptop bag slung over her shoulder, and a look that Daniel had learned to recognize something was on her mind. She greeted Isabel with a smile, dropped a pastry box on the counter, and waited until Daniel had poured 2 mugs of coffee before saying, "I need to ask you something." He looked at her cautious. "Okay, I've been offered a position on the West Coast. Consulting. 6 months? It's a good opportunity." The words dropped like ice cubes in a warm drink. Sudden. Disruptive. Daniel stayed quiet. Charlotte continued, her voice low. "It wouldn't be permanent. But it's one of those things that could shift my career. And I haven't said yes, because I don't know what we are. I don't know if I'm walking away from something real." Daniel set his mug down slowly. "You want me to tell you not to go? I want to know if you'd miss me if I did?" His jaw tightened, not in anger, but in that way he did when too many thoughts crowded at once. "I'd miss you," he said. "But more than that, I'd worry about Isabel." Charlotte stepped back, as if the words stung more than expected. "I wouldn't disappear, Daniel. She wouldn't understand that. She's resilient. She's been left before." The room went quiet. Isabel's voice floated in from her room, humming to herself, utterly unaware. Charlotte's voice softened. "So have I." He looked at her. Really looked. "I'm not telling you to stay," he said finally. "But I need to know what you're choosing, this job or this life." Her shoulders dropped. "Why does it have to be a choice?" "Because we're not casual, Charlotte. Not anymore. You said you wanted in. You said you wanted a life that matters. I do. Then show me." She took a breath, eyes glossy but dry. "Can I have time to think?" "Of course." But inside something already felt shifted. She stayed for lunch, ate quietly, laughed where it counted, played a board game with Isabel helped clean up. But the sparkle in her eyes, the light that had made Daniel trust this was more than a phase, was dimmer. By evening, she kissed Isabel's forehead and promised a return visit. Then she hugged Daniel in the doorway, lingering a moment too long. "I meant what I said," she whispered. "I care about both of you." He didn't pull her closer. But he didn't let go too fast either. When the door closed, Isabel looked up from the couch. "Is she sad?" Daniel rubbed a hand down his face. "Maybe." "Are you?" He sat beside her. "A little? Did I do something wrong?" His chest ached. "No, baby, not at all. Then why does it feel like something's changing?" Daniel didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled her in, kissed the top of her head. "Because sometimes grown-ups get scared too," he murmured. That night, after Isabel went to bed, Daniel stood in the quiet of the kitchen staring at the 2 mugs they hadn't washed. He should have rinsed them, should have put them away, but he couldn't make himself move. His phone buzzed. A text from Charlotte. "I don't want to be someone who walks away. I just don't know how to stay, and not fail you both." He read it twice, then 3 times. But he didn't reply. Not yet. Because part of him needed to know, would she fight for this? Would she fight for them? Or was this the beginning of goodbye? The days stretched quietly after Charlotte's visit. Not cold, not warm, just that in-between weather that felt like it couldn't make up its mind. Daniel found himself feeling the same way. He went through the motions getting Isabel to school, checking in at work, grocery runs, answering emails. But beneath it all, a silence followed him. Not loud, not angry, just missing. Charlotte hadn't messaged again, and Daniel hadn't replied to her last text. He'd typed a dozen versions. All honest. None felt right. How do you tell someone you're afraid of hoping too hard? One afternoon, Carmen stopped by unannounced, as she sometimes did when Daniel had been too quiet for too long. She stood at his kitchen counter with 2 coffee cups and narrowed eyes. "She's not the only one who disappears when scared, you know." Daniel leaned on the fridge. "I haven't disappeared. You've retreated. That's your thing." He sipped his coffee. She might be leaving. Carmen tilted her head. "And you're letting her. I'm giving her space to figure it out." Carmen raised an eyebrow. "You sure you're not just protecting yourself in advance? So if she goes, you can say you never got too close." Daniel looked away. She softened. "Danny, you can't build a life without risk. You can't love someone halfway and expect them to give you everything." He set the mug down. I finally had something that felt safe. And now it's shaky again. She's not a storm, Daniel. She's a person. One who clearly loves both of you. Then why is she even considering leaving? Because people chase safety when they're scared, just like you are now. He didn't respond, not because she was wrong, but because she wasn't. That evening, Isabel curled up beside him on the couch, coloring a birthday card for a classmate. She paused mid-marker. "When is Charlotte coming back?" Daniel hesitated. "She's thinking about something important right now." Isabel's face fell. "Is it because of me?" His heart clenched. "Hey. No. No, sweetie, this isn't about you." She looked up. "But I made her a friendship bracelet. I put it in her bag." Daniel blinked. "You did?" She nodded, suddenly shy. "It has pink and green beads, and a little heart in the middle." He swallowed. "She didn't say anything about it," Isabel whispered. Daniel gently took her hand. "Maybe she hasn't had time to open her bag yet. But if she did..." Isabel hesitated. "And she didn't like it." "She would love it," he said firmly. "You hear me? That bracelet probably made her cry in the best way." Isabel didn't look convinced. "Sometimes grown-ups need time to figure things out," Daniel added. "Even the ones who love us." She nodded slowly. Then, in a small voice, "I miss her." He pulled her close. "Me too." After putting Isabel to bed, Daniel sat on the edge of the couch for a long time, staring at the floor, at the quiet. Then he stood, grabbed his coat, and walked outside. The air was crisp, the moon soft behind thin clouds. He didn't know what he was doing until he was halfway down, the block phone in hand. He found her name, tapped it, and called. She answered on the second ring. "Daniel." There was a breath in her voice, hope, fear, something between. "I didn't know if I should call," he said. "You did." Another pause. "I miss you," he said. Silence on her end. Then quietly, "I miss you too." "I can't pretend this is easy for me," Daniel went on. "But I also can't keep pretending like you didn't change something in our lives. Daniel, Isabel made you a bracelet. Did you find it? He heard her breath catch. Then faintly, It's on my wrist right now. He closed his eyes. I want this to work, he said. But I need you to want it too. Not just when it's convenient, not when your career slows down or life feels empty. I need to know this matters enough for you to fight for it. I do, she said, voice trembling. I've been scared. But not of you. Of messing it up. Then stop running. She was quiet again, but when she spoke, her voice was steadier. I haven't accepted the consulting job. Daniel's heart thudded. I told them I needed to be closer to home, she said. Closer to the people who matter. He didn't speak. I'm not just staying for you, she added. I'm staying because I finally feel like I belong somewhere. The breeze shifted, lifting the edge of his coat. I think you do, he said. Can I come by tomorrow? She asked. I want to explain and apologize and just be there. We'd like that. Daniel walked home slower than usual, phone still warm in his hand. When he stepped inside, the house felt less heavy. He looked at the couch where Isabel's markers were still scattered. Then he looked at the door. Tomorrow wasn't promised. But sometimes, when people chose each other, really chose each other, tomorrow didn't feel so far away. Charlotte arrived just after noon, holding 2 coffees and a paper bag that smelled like cinnamon. Daniel opened the door and stepped back, letting her in without a word. Isabel's laughter echoed from her room, some cartoon most likely, and Charlotte smiled toward the sound, then back at Daniel. I didn't know if muffins were too much, she said quietly, lifting the bag. Muffins are safe, he replied, taking it from her. Safe's good. She followed him into the kitchen. For a minute, it felt almost normal again. She leaned against the counter, watching him unpack the food apple cinnamon blueberry one, with a swirl of chocolate on top. I almost turned around twice, she admitted. He didn't look up. Why didn't you? Because I promised myself, if I walked back through this door, I'd stop half living. Daniel glanced at her, the weight in her voice undeniable. I kept thinking I needed to choose between love and the life I built. Between being grounded and being ambitious. But maybe I've just never been shown how both could exist in the same space. He sat down at the table and gestured to the chair across from him. She joined him. I need to tell you something, she said, voice steadier now. My mother called me yesterday. Apparently word's gotten around that I'm not just seeing someone, but that it's serious. Daniel stayed quiet. She said she was surprised. That she assumed any relationship that didn't include someone from our circle wouldn't last. He exhaled slowly. That doesn't surprise me. She invited me to their spring gala next month. Charlotte's lips twisted into something between a smile and a grimace. And suggested I bring you. His eyebrows lifted. Is that a peace offering or an ambush? I don't know yet. But I told her we'd come. Daniel blinked. You told her I did. Because I want them to see who you are, who Isabel is, and because I'm done trying to keep pieces of my life in separate rooms. Silence settled again, thick, but not uncomfortable. Then she added, but I need to ask something else. And this one's harder. Daniel met her gaze. I've been thinking about what happens next, not just weekends or brunches or holidays. I mean really next. And I know we haven't said certain things out loud yet, but I also know how I feel. His heart thudded, quiet but deep. I'm not asking for an answer today, she said gently. I just want you to know I'm thinking long-term. About roots. About what it would mean to be present in your lives, not just adjacent to them. Daniel's jaw tightened slightly, a flicker of old grief rising to the surface. You know what it means, right, loving Isabel? It's not a weekend thing. It's math homework on bad days. It's holding her hand at dentist appointments. It's remembering how she likes her toast and what nightmares wake her up. Charlotte didn't flinch. I want all of it. You say that now. I'll keep saying it tomorrow. A pause. Then quietly, I want to be someone she trusts to stay. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached into the drawer beside him, pulled out a small bracelet, pink and green, the one Isabel had made. She gave this to you. Charlotte nodded. I kept it. She thought you didn't like it. Tears pooled in Charlotte's eyes. I wore it every day. I couldn't come back yet. Not until I knew I was ready to show up all the way. The sound of footsteps broke the moment. Isabel stood in the doorway, rubbing one eye hair a mess from lying on the floor. Is that muffin for me? She asked, pointing at the chocolate one. Charlotte smiled through tears. It is, if you still like chocolate swirl. I always like chocolate swirl. She padded in and climbed onto a chair beside Daniel. Then, looking at Charlotte, she added, Did you get my bracelet? Charlotte held out her wrist. I wore it the whole time. Isabel looked. You didn't stretch it out. Charlotte shook her head solemnly. I protected it with my life. Daniel glanced at Isabel, who gave a satisfied little nod and bit into the muffin. The quiet that followed wasn't silence. It was peace, a new kind. The kind built slowly, word by word, moment by moment. It wasn't a finish line. It was a beginning. And for the first time in a long while, Daniel let himself believe in what came next. Daniel hadn't worn a suit in years, not a real one. The kind with a fitted jacket, crisp shirt, and shoes that made a distinct sound against polished floors. But there he was standing in front of the mirror, adjusting the collar of his white button-down, like he was headed into something more serious than a gala. Because it wasn't just a gala, it was her world. Charlotte stepped into the room behind him, fastening an earring, her reflection meeting his in the mirror. You look like you're going to court, she teased gently. I feel like I'm on trial. She stepped closer, straightened his tie, and looked up at him. You're not. You're with me. He gave her a dry look. That's what worries me. She smiled, then leaned up and kissed his cheek. You'll survive. Isabel, wearing a soft lavender dress with glittery sneakers, burst in right then, holding a tiny purse she had insisted on packing herself. There was a sticker book, 2 crayons, and a mini candy cane inside. Are you sure I can come? She asked for the 3rd time that morning. Charlotte knelt. Not only can you come, you're the most important guest there. Isabel's eyes lit up. Because I'm fancy, because you're family. Daniel swallowed hard. They made the drive to Charleston in quiet stretches and soft conversation. Isabel sang half a Christmas song under her breath, even though it was February. Daniel tapped his fingers on the steering wheel. Charlotte rested her hand lightly on his knee. When they arrived at the venue, Daniel felt it instantly, the shift in atmosphere. Wealth hung in the air like perfume. Crystal chandeliers, towering arrangements, small talk that disguised old money and quiet competition. Charlotte guided them through it gracefully. She smiled at the right people, laughed at the right comments, and introduced Daniel and Isabel with confidence. But Daniel still felt it. The eyes, the questions behind the smiles. They reached her parents near the center of the ballroom. Her mother wore a pearl-colored dress and a smile that didn't quite touch her eyes. Her father held a glass of scotch and looked vaguely distracted. Mother, Dad, this is Daniel and this is Isabel. Her mother's lips tightened slightly. Of course. Isabel stepped forward and offered her hand completely unbothered. Hi, I brought my own snacks. Charlotte stifled a laugh. Her mother blinked. Charming. Daniel leaned down. Why don't you go explore with Charlotte's friend Tasha? She's over there by the chocolate fountain. Isabel squealed and dashed off. Daniel straightened and turned toward her parents. Her father was the first to speak. "You're a contractor, yes, I own a small company. We do residential renovation work." He nodded, like that answered every question he'd ever had. Charlotte cut in smoothly. "Daniel built the reading nook Isabel uses every afternoon, and the custom shelving in their living room. It's beautiful work." Her mother sipped her wine. "It's admirable to be hands-on." Daniel kept his expression calm. "I believe in building things that last." Her mother didn't respond, but Charlotte stepped closer to Daniel, linking her arm through his. "He's also the reason I don't feel like I'm suffocating anymore." That drew both parents' attention. Her voice didn't waver. "For the first time in my life, I'm not performing. I'm not pretending. And I owe a lot of that to this man and the girl who draws me pictures of turtles wearing sunglasses." Her father frowned. "Charlotte." "No," she said, firm but not cruel. "I'm done editing my life to fit someone else's expectations. Daniel and Isabel are my family now, whether or not they fit into the frame you prefer." Daniel felt his breath catch. She turned toward him. "And if I haven't said this directly yet, I want a life with you. Not just moments, not just weekends, all of it." His chest tightened, not with fear, but with the weight of everything he wanted, and didn't know he could have. He searched her face. "Are you sure?" he asked quietly. "I've never been more sure." He looked over at her parents, at the room still humming with polite judgment, then back at her. Then he smiled. "Then let's go get our daughter before she eats the entire chocolate fountain." She laughed a real laugh and took his hand. They walked away from the circle of tension toward something far better than approval. They walked toward joy. It had been 2 weeks since the gala. 2 weeks since Charlotte stood in a room full of polished expectations and chose something messier, something braver, something real. And now everything was changing. Not fast, but meaningfully. Daniel sat on the back porch with a cup of coffee, the late afternoon sun warm on his shoulders. From inside he could hear Isabel narrating an elaborate story to Charlotte, something about a space princess and a talking dog who solved mysteries in zero gravity. Charlotte laughed at the right moments, asked just enough questions to keep Isabel going, and Daniel smiled without even realizing it. It was becoming a rhythm, not a fantasy, not a whirlwind, but something steady earned. Charlotte had started spending longer weekends in Savannah. She worked remotely when she could, made the 3-hour drive without complaint when she couldn't. And she no longer moved around the house like a guest. She knew where the mugs were, which drawer held the tape. How Isabel liked her sandwiches cut on diagonal, not straight across. Still, Daniel hadn't said the words, not because he didn't feel them, but because once spoken they couldn't be taken back. He was building something here carefully, stone by stone, and he wasn't sure what scared him more, losing it, or believing it could really last. Charlotte stepped onto the porch, carrying 2 glasses of lemonade. She handed him one, then sat beside him on the top step. "Isabel's rewriting the ending again," she said, amused. "Apparently the dog turns out to be the long-lost king of Neptune." Daniel chuckled. "She's got your imagination." Charlotte tilted her head. "You think so? She's never made up stories like that before. Not this much. She's safe now. That helps creativity bloom." They sat for a while, sipping in the quiet. Then Charlotte asked, "Have you thought about it?" Daniel looked over. "About what, us?" He swallowed, careful not to move too quickly. She continued gently. "I don't mean pressure. I just mean the next step. Not something flashy or dramatic, just real." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "Sometimes I think about you standing in the kitchen, that first night, talking to Isabel like you'd known her forever." Charlotte's lips curled into a soft smile. "I think about Christmas Eve," he added. "You helping her catch snowflakes." The look on her face, how easy it was. Charlotte didn't speak, just listened. "And I think about how I used to wake up to silence. And now I wake up to you humming while you make coffee. Or Isabel asking where you are if she doesn't see your car." He set the glass down. "I've never let anyone this close, not since—" He didn't finish. Charlotte reached over and gently took his hand. "You don't have to protect me from your past," she said softly. "I know. But you do have to tell me if I'm part of your future." His eyes met hers. "You are." She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for days. "I don't want a ring yet," she said. "Not a ceremony. Not anything that feels like a headline. I'm not ready for all that either, but I do want something." He raised an eyebrow. She hesitated, then smiled. "A drawer." Daniel blinked. "A drawer in your bathroom," she clarified. "Or the hallway. Somewhere I can leave a toothbrush and moisturizer, and one of those hair ties I can never find when I need it." He laughed full and real. "You want a drawer? I want your drawer." Daniel walked inside, and returned with a small wooden box. "This used to be in the guest room," he said, "but it's empty now." She opened it. Inside were 2 little hair ties, a travel-size lotion, and the bracelet Isabel had made gently placed inside. Her throat tightened. "I figured you might want to start with more than a drawer." She looked up at him, eyes glassy. "I want all of it," she whispered. He pulled her into a quiet hug. "I know," he said. And for the first time since they met, Daniel stopped bracing for something to go wrong. Instead, he started believing in something that just might go right. The drawer was a beginning. Small, quiet, ordinary to anyone else but to Daniel, it meant Charlotte wasn't just visiting his world anymore. She was part of it. There was her toothbrush next to his, her favorite tea on the second shelf, a soft cardigan draped over the back of the living room chair because she'd gotten cold watching Isabel draw last night. It wasn't about things. It was about presence. And presence, Daniel had learned, was everything. He and Charlotte still had their differences. She liked the city pace. He preferred porch mornings and slow coffee. She still took calls that lasted too long, and he still forgot to text back sometimes when he got buried in projects. But they were learning each other's rhythms, learning to leave room for grace. One Saturday morning, Daniel found Isabel sitting at the kitchen table, her head tilted as she concentrated on drawing something. "What you working on, kiddo?" She looked up with a grin. "A map. A map of our family." He smiled. "Can I see?" She slid it over. There were 3 stick figures in the center, one with short brown hair labeled "Me One" with longer wavy lines that said Charlotte, and one that looked suspiciously like him with the word Dad in big letters. Around them were hearts and stars, a few clumsy arrows, and a box with future written in glitter pen. Daniel blinked at the word. "Future, huh?" Isabel nodded. "That's where we're going. I made space for it." He touched the paper gently. "You always know just what to say." Later that afternoon, while Isabel was napping with a book on her chest, and the house was still, Charlotte walked into the kitchen and leaned against the counter. She studied Daniel as he rinsed dishes. "I've been thinking." He dried his hands and turned. "Dangerous." She smiled. "Do you remember what you said to me on New Year's Eve?" His brow creased. "Which part?" "That if you love someone, you don't leave." He nodded slowly. "I want to ask you something," she said, "but I need you to really hear it." He set the towel down and gave her his full attention. Charlotte took a breath, then stepped closer. Her voice softened. Can you be my husband?" Daniel's eyes widened, not in fear but in shock, then in awe. "You're serious. I've thought about this for weeks. I know it's not traditional. I know it's not how people usually do it. But nothing about us has been usual. And I don't want to waste time pretending I need to wait to be chosen. I am choosing. I'm choosing you. I'm choosing Isabel. I'm choosing this life." Silence sat between them for a long beat. Then Daniel stepped forward, his eyes shining. "You just flipped the whole script on me. I figured it was time." He laughed, quiet, warm, and then gently he took her hands in his. "I was going to ask you," he said. Charlotte's eyebrows rose. "Not today," he added. "I didn't have a plan yet, but I knew. I've known for a while." So he looked at her like she was the only thing in the room. "Yes." Her breath caught. "Yes, yes," he said again. "I want to be your husband." Charlotte wrapped her arms around him, pressing her face into his shoulder. He held her like she was the only thing he'd been reaching for his whole life. From the hallway, a sleepy voice broke the quiet. "Are we getting cake?" They turned. Isabel stood in her pajamas, one sock missing hair, wild. Daniel laughed. "Cake, I heard something happy," she said, rubbing her eyes. "Usually happy stuff means cake." Charlotte knelt down, still laughing. "We're not having cake yet, but we will." "Why?" "Because I asked your dad to marry me." Isabel's eyes widened, then slowly turned into a grin. "Did he say yes?" "He did." Isabel clapped once. "Good. I already drew that on the map." Daniel blinked. "You would I put a ring by your stick figures," she said proudly. "Just in case." They all laughed, and in that tiny kitchen with no rings yet, no fancy plans or guest lists, something rare unfolded, pure and real and lasting. Not the kind of proposal made for headlines, but the kind made for hearts. And for Daniel, that was the only kind that ever mattered. The spring morning arrived quiet and golden, the kind that made everything feel gentle. A soft breeze passed through the lace curtains in the kitchen, carrying the scent of lemon muffins and fresh-cut grass. Daniel stood at the sink, sleeves rolled up, rinsing breakfast dishes. Isabel sat cross-legged at the table, painting with watercolors. And Charlotte, still in her robe, was at the counter arranging wildflowers into a mason jar like it was the most important job in the world. It was a Saturday like any other, and that was the beautiful part, because it wasn't rushed, it wasn't polished, it was theirs. "You know," Charlotte said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, "I still can't believe I asked you." Daniel smirked, drying his hands. "I can. You've never waited long to go after what you want." She raised an eyebrow. "Are you saying I'm impatient? I'm saying you're brave?" Isabel looked up from her painting. "I'm glad you asked him," she said, matter-of-factly dabbing blue across her page. "You both would have taken forever?" Daniel and Charlotte exchanged a smile. "Smart kid," he said. "She gets it from me," Charlotte replied. That afternoon, they drove out to Tybee Island, not for a ceremony, not for some grand event, but for a promise. One they'd already started living, but wanted to speak out loud, just the three of them standing where the sand met the sea. Daniel wore his usual button-down and jeans. Charlotte wore a pale green dress that fluttered in the wind. Isabel insisted on wearing a crown made of seashells and carried a small notebook titled Official Family Declarations, which she'd handwritten the night before in sparkly ink. The beach was quiet, except for the gentle crash of waves and the cry of gulls overhead. They walked barefoot along the shoreline until they found a spot where the breeze felt just right, and the sun lit the water like glass. Charlotte turned toward Daniel, nervous and glowing all at once. "I never dreamed of this when I was young," she said softly. "I didn't picture white dresses or big halls. I pictured being seen, being safe, being known. And somehow, here you are." With your quiet strength, with your kindness, with your daughter who gave me a second chance at a childhood I didn't know I needed." Daniel's throat was already tight. "I don't know what tomorrow looks like," she continued. "But I know I want it with you. I want the coffee spoons and the bedtime stories. I want the drawer and the dishes and every small, honest part of this life we've built." She reached for his hands. "I choose you, Daniel. Every day. Without pretending, without performance. Just as we are." Daniel looked down at their joined hands, then up into her eyes. "I never thought I'd do this again," he said quietly. "After Melissa, I told myself, love was something I'd only have once. Something I had to survive losing." He glanced at Isabel, standing proudly to the side with her shell crown slightly crooked. "But then came this girl. And then you. And for the first time in years, I wasn't surviving anymore. I was living, I was hoping." Charlotte blinked against tears. "I want this life," he said. "Not just because it's better than what I had, but because it's real. Because you make it brighter. Because you love my daughter like she's your own. And because you let me love you without asking me to change who I am." He paused, voice breaking. "So I promise to show up. On the hard days, on the quiet ones, and on the ones where nothing feels like enough. I'll be here. For you. For her. For us." A tear slipped down Charlotte's cheek. Then Isabel stepped forward, flipping open her notebook. "Ahem," she said with all the gravity of a judge. "I, Isabel May Cartwright, declare this family officially awesome. I now pronounce you hug partners for life." They both laughed, and Daniel lifted Isabel into his arms, just as Charlotte leaned in. The three of them embraced as the wind whipped around them, and for a moment it didn't matter that there were no chairs, no guests, no cake. Just waves, just sunlight, just a promise. Later they sat on a blanket eating sandwiches and watching the tide pull in and out. Charlotte leaned her head against Daniel's shoulder. "Do you think people like us get to have happily ever afters?" she asked. He looked at her for a long moment. "I don't know if we'll ever be perfect," he said, "but we'll be honest. And maybe that's better." She smiled softly. "Maybe it is." As the sun lowered into the horizon, casting everything in gold, Isabel fell asleep in the crook of Charlotte's arm fingers, still stained with watercolor. And Daniel, watching them, his daughter, and the woman who had turned a quiet life into something extraordinary, felt something settle in his chest. Peace. It didn't come all at once. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was the kind of peace that only comes when you've walked through storms, doubted everything, and still chosen to love. This wasn't the life he expected. It was better. And for the first time, he didn't fear what came next. He welcomed it,